Keanu Reeves had always been known for his calm presence, but that evening he carried something heavier than calm. He walked through the crowded hall, his shoulders steady, his steps unhurried. The world outside seemed loud, filled with flashing lights, cameras, and people rushing to be seen. But Keanu walked slower. Every movement of his body was measured, every glance gentle, almost as if he was protecting a space no one else could see. Ana de Armas walked a few steps behind him. She was dressed simply, her hair falling softly over her shoulders. The crowd's noise pressed against her like a heavy wave. She felt her heart race. It was not fear of the people or the cameras. It was something deeper. It was the quiet memory of times when she had walked alone, when no one noticed her, when silence felt like a weight she had to carry by herself. But this time, she was not alone. Keanu turned slightly, his eyes catching hers. He slowed his pace so she could walk beside him. No words were exchanged. There was no need. The small act carried a meaning stronger than speeches. It was respect. It was kindness. It was the message that she did not have to face the moment by herself. The hall they entered was bright, almost blinding. Faces turned toward them, and whispers spread like fire across dry grass. Everyone expected confidence, perfection, and charm. But what they saw instead was something far more powerful. Two people walking together at the same pace, one slowing down so the other would not feel left behind. The silence of that moment became heavier than applause. Ana felt her throat tighten. She had prepared herself for judgment, for stares, for questions she could not answer. Yet the only thing she felt now was the steady rhythm of Keanu's presence beside her. His steps were not rushed. He was telling the world without a single word that kindness mattered more than speed, and respect mattered more than attention. As they reached the stage, Ana hesitated. Her mind was full of doubts. Should she speak? Should she stand tall? Should she pretend to be stronger than she felt? The weight of expectation sat on her shoulders, but before she could let fear decide, she noticed Keanu's hand resting gently at his side, not reaching out to control, not pulling her forward, but simply steady, like an anchor in the storm. He looked at her again, and this time his eyes carried a quiet message. Take your time. I am here. She stepped forward. The crowd hushed. The lights burned brighter. But her steps, once heavy, began to feel lighter. Each movement was no longer hers alone. It was theirs. The first words she spoke trembled slightly, but she spoke them anyway. Her voice cracked, but it did not break. And as she continued, her words grew steadier. The audience leaned in closer, not because she was flawless, but because she was real, because they saw a woman who had found courage in silence, and a man who had chosen to walk slower so she would not walk alone. The hall felt transformed. It was no longer a stage, no longer a place of judgment. It was a reminder to everyone watching that respect is not shown in grand speeches, but in small choices. That kindness is not loud, but it is powerful enough to change the air around it. Ana finished her first line. Her chest tightened with emotion, but she did not falter. She glanced at Keanu, and his calm nod was all the strength she needed to keep going. What the crowd saw that night was not just two actors. They saw two souls reminding the world of something it often forgets. That walking together, at the same pace, with humility and care, is a greater act than walking fast and leaving someone behind. And for the first time in her life, Ana felt that silence was not loneliness. Silence could also mean protection. Silence could also mean love. The story had only begun,
night after the
but
event,
already
Ana sat
something inside
quietly in
her
her
had
small
changed.
apartment.
The room was still, but her mind was restless. She replayed every step she had taken on that stage, every trembling word, and every glance toward Keanu. She knew the world had seen only a few minutes of her life, but for her, those minutes had carried years of hidden pain. She had always looked strong in front of cameras. She had smiled when she wanted to cry, laughed when she felt empty inside, and nodded politely even when her heart screamed in silence. But Keanu had noticed. He had seen through the careful mask she wore, and instead of asking her to explain, he had simply slowed his pace. It was such a small action, yet it told her something powerful. She did not need to prove her strength every moment. Sometimes, it was enough to simply be. As she stared at the city lights outside her window, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Keanu. No long sentences, no complicated words, just a few simple lines. You did well tonight. Remember, the world listens more when you speak honestly. Proud of you. Her eyes filled with tears, not because the words were dramatic, but because they were gentle, real, and kind. She whispered the message out loud to herself, as if saying it again would make it stay inside her heart longer. The next day, they were both invited to another gathering. Anna hesitated. She thought about refusing. She didn't want to face more stares, more whispers, more pressure. But when she remembered Keanu's steady eyes, she felt something shift inside her. Maybe it was not about being perfect. Maybe it was about showing up, even when she was afraid. When they entered the hall together, the whispers returned, just as she had feared. Some smiled, some judged, some compared her to what they thought she should be. The noise inside her head grew louder with every step. But once again, Keanu slowed down. He adjusted his pace to hers, his movements unhurried, his presence calm. She realized then that people could judge, the cameras could flash, and the world could demand. But none of it mattered if someone walked beside you at your own rhythm. As the evening went on, there was a moment when the host asked Anna to speak again. She froze. The microphone in front of her felt heavier than stone. Her throat tightened and she could feel the sting of fear pressing against her chest. Then, something unexpected happened. Keanu leaned closer, just enough so only she could hear, and whispered, "You don't have to be perfect. Just be real." His words were soft, but they cut through the noise in her head. She took a slow breath and began to speak. Her voice trembled again, but this time she did not try to hide it. Instead, she let her emotions flow. She spoke about fear, about strength, about walking in silence and finding someone who slowed down so she would not feel left behind. The room fell silent. The crowd listened, not because her words were polished, but because they were raw, human, and true. When she finished, the applause was not loud at first. It was gentle, like rain starting to fall. But then it grew, wave after wave, until the hall was filled with sound. Anna stood there, her hands trembling, her eyes wet, but her heart lighter than it had ever been. She looked at Keanu. He didn't clap louder than anyone else. He didn't draw attention to himself. He only gave her a small, quiet smile, the kind that said, "This was always inside you. I just walked slower so you could see it." Anna realized then that true respect was not about lifting someone onto a stage. It was about standing beside them step by step, even when the world moved too fast. And that night, as she walked out of the hall, she noticed something she had never noticed before. She was walking at her own pace, steady and unafraid. And Keanu was right there beside her. The following morning, Anna woke to sunlight spilling across her room, simply walking with her. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe without fear pressing against her chest. But as she scrolled through her phone, her heart tightened again. Headlines filled the screen. Pictures of her from the previous night were everywhere. Some praised her honesty, calling her words brave. Others criticized her, saying she looked weak, unprepared, even fragile. Anna closed her eyes, fighting the old familiar ache. It was always the same. Praise mixed with judgment, kindness mixed with cruelty. She thought about deleting everything, shutting out the world. But then she remembered Keanu's words. You don't have to be perfect. Just be real. Still, the voices of doubt echoed louder than the applause. She sat by the window, hugging her knees, wondering if she had done the wrong thing by opening herself up. That afternoon, there was a quiet knock on her door. When she opened it, Keanu stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. He didn't say much, just offered her 1 cup and stepped inside. They sat together in silence, sipping slowly. Keanu didn't ask about the headlines. He didn't bring up the criticism. Instead, he asked a simple question. How do you feel? Anna hesitated. No one had ever asked her that without expecting a polished answer. She swallowed hard and whispered, I feel small. Keanu nodded gently, not rushing to fill the silence. After a long pause, he said, Sometimes feeling small just means you're standing in front of something bigger than yourself. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're honest enough to admit what most people hide. His words sank deep. For a moment, Anna felt the tears she had been holding back begin to rise again, but this time, she didn't push them away. She let them fall. Later that week, they were invited to a charity event. It was smaller, quieter, but still filled with people who expected smiles and polished speeches. Anna almost refused, but Keanu encouraged her. You don't have to perform, he told her. Just show up as yourself. That's enough. When they arrived, the hall buzzed softly with conversations. Anna felt the old nervousness return, but something inside her had changed. She walked slower, calmer, matching the steady rhythm Keanu had taught her. During the event, a young girl approached her shyly. She looked no older than 14, her eyes wide with admiration and fear. She whispered, You spoke last night about being afraid. I feel like that all the time. How did you do it? Anna's heart melted. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. But then she knelt down so her eyes were level with the girl's and said softly, I was afraid too. I still am. But someone walked beside me, and that made me brave enough to speak. Maybe one day you'll find someone who walks beside you too. The girl smiled through her nervousness, and for the first time, Anna realized that her trembling words had reached farther than she thought. Keanu, standing quietly nearby, caught the moment. He didn't step in, didn't take the spotlight. He only watched with a calm pride that showed he understood. When the evening ended and they walked out together, Anna felt something new. She was no longer only leaning on Keanu's strength. She had begun to discover her own. But just as the air felt lighter, a shadow began to grow. Outside the hall, reporters waited. Questions flew like arrows. Some were kind, some sharp, some cruel. One voice cut above the rest, asking in a harsh tone, Anna, do you think you needed Keanu to protect you because you're too weak to stand alone? The question stung like a wound reopened. Anna froze, her heart pounding. For a second, her old fear threatened to take over. But then, she felt Keanu's steady presence beside her. He didn't answer for her. He didn't silence the reporters. Instead, he looked at her with the same calm eyes as before, as if asking her silently, What do you want to say? Anna drew a slow breath. The crowd was waiting, cameras flashing. The moment stretched like a thread about to snap. And then, in a voice that trembled but did not break, she said, No. He doesn't walk slower because I am
After
weak.
that bold answer outside the
slower
hall,
because
Anna
kindness
thought the
means
storm
not
would
leaving
pass.
people behind.
But storms never leave
And that's
so
what
quickly.
true strength looks
The following days were filled with
The crowd
endless
hushed.
headlines.
For a
Some
heartbeat,
praised
even
her
the
words,
cameras seemed
calling
to
her
pause.
strong and honest.
Keanu looked at her
Others
with quiet
twisted them,
pride,
saying
and
she
realized
realized
she had just broken free from something
using
that had
his
held her
name
down
as a
for
shield.
years. The pressure was heavier than before, and the voices of doubt tried to creep back into her mind. Keanu, however, remained the same. He did not defend himself, did not argue with the media, and did not make grand speeches. Instead, he chose silence. Silence, not as weakness, but as a shield of peace. Anna noticed how he carried himself. While the world shouted, he walked slower, calmer, almost as if reminding her that storms only last as long as you let them inside your heart. But one evening, everything changed. Anna received an invitation to speak at a large gathering, an event focused on young people, filled with thousands of faces waiting for hope. The invitation praised her courage from the previous nights, but hidden beneath the kind words was a test. She knew many would watch closely, waiting for her to stumble, waiting to say that her strength was borrowed, not her own. Anna almost refused. Her hands trembled as she held the letter. "I cannot do this," she whispered. Keanu, sitting across the room, looked at her quietly for a long time. Then he said softly, "You already did. Every time you spoke in fear, you still spoke. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is walking forward even when your knees shake." She listened, but doubt still lingered. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing the voices of those who had judged her. But mixed with those voices was another, Keanu's steady tone, reminding her that silence itself could carry strength. The night of the gathering arrived. The hall was enormous, filled with lights and anticipation. Thousands of young people sat waiting, their eyes bright with curiosity, hope, and expectation. Anna stood backstage, her heart pounding like a drum. Her hands were cold, her breath uneven. Then Keanu stepped beside her. He didn't give a long speech. He only touched her shoulder lightly and said, "Walk at your own pace. I will walk with you." Those words carried her forward. When they stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. Anna felt her chest tighten, but she took a slow breath and remembered, honesty, not perfection. She began to speak. Her voice wavered at first, but instead of hiding it, she let it show. She spoke about fear, about feeling small, about the weight of judgment, and about the simple kindness that had changed her life. Someone walking slower so she wouldn't walk alone. The hall grew quiet, thousands listening as if each word mattered. Then, from the middle of the crowd, a young man stood up and asked loudly, "But what happens when the person walking with you disappears? What happens when you are left alone again?" The question pierced the air. Anna froze. For a heartbeat, her old fear returned. But then something inside her shifted. She looked at the young man and answered, "Then I will remember the pace I learned. Because someone who slows down for you doesn't give you weakness. They teach you how to walk stronger by yourself." The hall erupted with applause. Some clapped, some stood, and some wiped their eyes. Anna felt her throat tighten, but this time it was not from fear. It was from the overwhelming weight of realizing she had spoken her truth. Not Keanu's truth, not anyone else's, but her own. Backstage after the event, Anna leaned against the wall, exhausted yet lighter than ever. Keanu joined her, handing her a bottle of water. She looked at him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I think I finally understand. You weren't teaching me to depend on you. You were teaching me how to find my own pace." Keanu smiled quietly. "Exactly. Real kindness doesn't bind people. It frees them." In that moment, Anna realized the deepest truth of all. Respect was not about standing in someone's shadow, and kindness was not about carrying someone forever. It was about walking together until the other person could walk freely on their own. But even as this truth filled her heart, she knew the journey ahead would not be simple. Storms always return and shadows always wait. The real test was yet to come. After the powerful night where Anna spoke her truth, she felt something inside her shift. For the first time, she believed that she could stand without collapsing under the weight of judgment. But the world is not always gentle. Storms return, sometimes stronger than before, and this one came faster than she expected. The very next morning, headlines spun in every direction. Some called her words a message of hope, but others twisted them. One article claimed she was ungrateful, saying she had leaned too heavily on Keanu and was now trying to deny it. Another headline accused her of playing the victim, of using her emotions for attention. The cruelest ones mocked her trembling voice, turning her honesty into weakness for the world to laugh at. Anna sat at her table, scrolling through the endless noise. Her chest tightened with every cruel word. No matter how strong she had felt the night before, the comments cut deeply. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I am not strong enough for this." Keanu visited later that day. He found her curled on the couch, her phone still glowing in her hand. He took it gently, set it aside, and sat beside her. "You cannot let strangers decide your worth," he said softly. "People will always twist stories, but the truth you spoke belongs to you, not to them." Anna shook her head. "But their voices are louder than mine." Keanu looked at her for a long moment, then replied, "Louder does not mean stronger. Storms make noise, but mountains stay silent, and still, they endure." His words stayed with her, but the battle inside was not so easy. That night, Anna lay awake again, fighting shadows that whispered doubt. She wondered if maybe walking slower together had been enough, and she should stop trying to face the world at all. The next week brought a charity dinner. Anna didn't want to go, but she forced herself, not wanting to disappoint those who invited her. The hall was full of polished smiles, glittering dresses, and sharp eyes waiting to judge. She held her breath as she entered, her steps heavy. The whispers began almost immediately. She caught fragments of them. She only speaks when he is there. She pretends to be strong, but without him, she is nothing. Look at her, hiding behind a gentle face. The words hit harder than she expected. For a moment, she felt her knees weaken. But then, as she looked to her side, she saw Keanu's pace once again. Slow, steady, calm. He was not shielding her, not fighting the whispers, but reminding her of something deeper. She had already proven herself once, and she could do it again. When it was her turn to speak, Anna walked onto the stage with her heart trembling. The lights felt too bright, the silence too sharp. She gripped the microphone, fighting back the fear pressing against her chest. But instead of hiding her fear, she chose to show it. Her voice shook as she said, "I hear the whispers. I hear the people who say I am not strong enough, who say I only stand because someone else slows down for me. Maybe they are right about one thing. I was afraid. I still am. But fear does not make me weak. Fear makes me human. And walking slower together taught me that being human is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to honor." The hall fell silent. Some bowed their heads, some wiped tears, and some clapped softly. The whispers had no answer. Afterward, as she stepped off stage, Keanu met her with that same calm smile. "You walked at your own pace tonight," he said, "and you did not fall." Anna felt the tears rise again, but this time they were not tears of fear. They were tears of release. For the first time, she believed she could stand even when storms surrounded her. But deep inside, she knew this was not the end. Storms were only part of the journey. The real test would not come from whispers, but from the moment when she would have to walk forward without anyone beside her at all. The weeks that followed were quieter on the surface, but inside Anna, the storm still lingered. She had learned to speak with honesty, to face whispers with courage, and to find strength in her fear. But deep down, a question haunted her. What happens when Keanu is not beside me? What happens when I truly have to walk alone? Life has a way of answering questions with moments we least expect. One morning, Anna received an invitation to a conference overseas. It was a chance to speak about courage and truth in front of thousands from different parts of the world. The organizers praised her story, but she quickly noticed something in the details. Keanu had not been invited. This time, it was only her. Her hands shook as she read the letter. Part of her wanted to decline, to say no, to hide behind the safety of silence. But another part of her whispered that this was the test she had been waiting for. She called Keanu that evening, her voice unsteady. "They only invited me. I don't think I can do this without you." There was a pause on the line, then his calm voice replied, "Yes, you can. I walked slower so you could learn your own pace. And now, it is time. I will not be there on the stage, but remember, what I taught you does not disappear when I do. It lives inside you." Anna's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, wanted to ask him to come anyway, but something in his tone told her that he was right. The time had come. The night of the conference arrived. The hall was vast, filled with faces she had never seen before. The lights were blinding, the cameras unblinking. She stood backstage, her heart pounding harder than ever. For a moment, fear almost won. She wanted to turn and run, to escape before it was too late. But then, she remembered the first time Keanu had slowed his steps for her. She remembered the quiet coffee on her couch, the whispered words before she spoke, the steady presence that had never forced her forward but had walked beside her until she was ready. And in that memory, she found her strength. When her name was called, she stepped onto the stage alone. The applause was soft, polite. The crowd waited. She gripped the microphone, her hands trembling, her voice caught in her throat. Then she began. She spoke about fear, about silence, about judgment, and about kindness that does not carry but teaches. She told them of the night she thought she could not breathe, and of the simple moment when someone slowed down so she would not feel left behind. She explained that true strength is not built in isolation, but in the moments when someone shows you respect and patience until you can carry yourself. Her voice shook, but she did not hide it. She let it flow, raw and real. The audience leaned closer, pulled not by perfection, but by truth. Halfway through her speech, she paused. She looked out at the sea of faces and whispered, "For a long time I thought I needed someone to walk beside me forever. But now I know. I only needed someone to teach me that my pace mattered too. And once you learn that, you are never truly alone." The hall went silent, and then, one by one, people began to rise. The applause grew, wave after wave, until the sound filled every corner of the room. Anna felt tears streaming down her face, but she did not wipe them away. She stood tall, her heart lighter than it had ever been. After the speech, as she stepped off stage, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Keanu. 3 simple words. "You did it." She smiled through her tears. He hadn't needed to be there physically. His kindness, his respect, his choice to walk slower, those gifts had already become part of her. That night, as Anna sat quietly in her hotel room, she thought about the journey, about the fear, the whispers, the trembling words, and the silence that once felt like loneliness but had become her strength. She realized now that life was not about walking fast or reaching the stage first. It was about walking with kindness, with humility, and with enough patience to wait for those who struggled to keep up. And she understood that even when we must walk alone, we carry the steps of those who once walked beside us.